Hello and welcome. My name is Natty Cash, and I am here today doing something a little bit different compared to what I've done on my channel before. And I am predicting the Premier League table for the 2023-2024 season. I've done this a few years on my own. This is the first year I'm going to make a video about it. I have also made a championship prediction video, so if you want to go to my channel and see that as well, that is also available. And so, me as a Canadian, I'm really excited to watch the Premier League season once again this year, and this is your Canadian's perspective on the Premier League this season. We are going to be starting at the bottom of the table and making our way up one team at a time. Let's get to it. In 20th position, I have Wolverhampton. A big reason for me to do this and to put Wolverhampton into the very bottom is because of Lopetegui, their manager, leaving just a few days before the season starts. It creates a lot of chaos, and there's already been announcements about financial issues with the club. They sold a number of good players like Neves, and they haven't really replaced them well enough, in my opinion. I think I don't think there's going to be a good manager that comes in that is going to be helpful for this team, especially just how Lopetegui left. And many good managers are going to steer clear of this, which means that Wolverhampton's going to suffer, meaning they're going to sit in 20th position at the bottom of the table this year. In 19th place, we have Sheffield United. They did well to get promoted in second position. The problem that I have is, again, they're in a situation where they've sold many of their good players, like Sander Berg and their top goal scorer. And they haven't had, I think, a really good transfer window of bringing people in. They are also limited by some finances. And so for me, it looks like Sheffield United are kind of more so just prepping that they're going to get some funds from the Premier League and make sure that they're financially stable when they go back into the championship. So for me, I think Sheffield United is also going to struggle and going to be near the bottom, and I've put them at 19th. In 18th position, I have also put a newly promoted team in Luton Town. Now, Luton Town has done well to win in the playoffs and get promoted for the first time in a while. And for Luton Town, again, it's a case where they've done well to keep the pieces that helped them to get promoted, but I don't know how much they've really strengthened beyond that. I think they might have the ability to get some cheeky wins at home against some good sides, but I think it's going to be tough for them to grind out the whole schedule. I think they're just going to miss surviving, and they're going to be relegated in 18th position. In 17th position, I've gone with Bournemouth. Now, with Bournemouth, I'm very concerned about where they're going to go this year. Gary O'Neill, their manager, did well to come in partway through the season and keep them up and help them survive. However, then they decided to go a different direction and hire a new manager. And that manager is looking to play a more progressive style. Now, my concern is that progressive style, similar to what Scott Parker was trying to do when they got promoted, may not be right for this team. And so I feel like they're going to struggle. Now, they do have a second year in the Premier League. You know, they have shown that they can survive. So I did put them in this position, just surviving over the other teams below them. But I do find that it's going to be a bit of a struggle. Now, I could be wrong. They could push on forward, but as we've seen with other teams that have done this in the past, they're going to be sitting very similar to where they were before, and I have put them in 17th position this year. And in 16th position, I have put Nottingham Forest. Forest did well to survive last year, and they brought in a ton of players in order to do that. Now, this year, they have not had that many transfers, maybe only a couple, and that speaks to maybe trying to settle things down, trying to make sure that the squad can gel. However, in the Premier League, that isn't always a successful model, in that only kind of standing still. Oftentimes, if you're trying to stand still, it means that you might regress. I don't think they're going to regress too much, but I think it might be next year when they might have some more funds to put in the squad again that they might start looking further up the table. I think at this point they're going to be within a relegation battle, but I think in the end be relatively safe a few weeks towards the end of the season, and so I'm going to have them in 16th position. Number 15, I have gone with Everton. I think Sean Dyche is the right guy to be here at this time. Everton is also dealing with some financial stuff, and especially with their new stadium going to be opening next year. They need someone that's going to just make sure that Everton can get results. It may not be pretty football, and I do hope that the fan base is patient in that process. But I do believe that Everton can kind of push themselves a little bit further away from the relegation zone. Now, they could push on and push further up the table. I still think, in general, they're going to be within the bottom half of the table itself. But I do have them kind of lower mid-table, sitting in 15th this year. Next up in 14th, I have West Ham. West Ham's a very interesting one because, one, they didn't do that great in the league. However, they went on and won the Europa Conference League. So they're a team that was kind of middle table, or bottom of the mid-table, and then now they also play in Europa League. So the trouble with me is trying to figure out where do they fit in this. On top of that, they've sold Declan Rice, and at this moment in time have not really put any significant money into finding replacements for Declan Rice or trying to strengthen the squad with that money. And so it's hard for me to say that they're going to push on beyond this or be necessarily like towards the top half, as I've seen other predictions be. So I'm going to be kind of conservative here and sitting at 14th. I do hope that their European ventures don't pull away from their league performance, especially because they don't have kind of a central talisman that they had in Declan Rice anymore. So I predict that they're going to kind of finish in this lower mid-table, sitting at 14th. And in 13th, I have Fulham. Fulham did very well coming up and being promoted last year. And a big part of that was due to their main striker, Mitrovic. Now, there's still a lot of questions about what he's going to be doing. He's made mention that he's never going to play for Fulham again. And so I don't know what this team looks like without him, if it's a case where he ends up getting sold, which could mean that Fulham are at risk of dropping down the table. I've kind of hedged my bet here in saying that Mitrovic is still on the team. If they're able to use them, they're going to float around that mid-table point. And so for my prediction, I'm going to sit them kind of just off of that top half, a few spots, and say they're going to finish 13th. In 12th position, I have Burnley. Burnley did very well in the championship last year. A lot of people thought that Vincent Kompany would maybe take a year to be able to gel this team into the style that he wants, but he did a really good job in his first year in order to do that. Now, what that looks like in the Premier League is I think they're going to, be strong against the teams that are in the bottom half of the table. And, there's still going to be some struggles along the way being promoted into the Premier League. But I think out of some of the teams that I've talked about, they have a certain stability around them at the moment. And so I think they're going to be pretty safe and be kind of in that mid-table conversation. And so I'm going to see that Burnley is going to be in 12th position this year. In 11th position is Brentford. Now, we've seen that Brentford has been a very well-run club. They've continued to push kind of boundaries in the size of their club and how they've been able to stay in the Premier League. And the one question that I have for them is, how is their main striker being gone? How they are going to cope without Ivan Toney for a portion of the year? I think they've seen They have some good attacking options with Visa and Mbuemo. And I think that they will do well to kind of get results without Tony. And then when Tony does come back in, hopefully then they can gel well. And I do see Brentford kind of sitting right in the middle of that table, sitting at 11th this year. Number 10, Crystal Palace. The one question that I have for this team is, what is it going to look like without their main talisman Zaha this year, as he's gone to play for Galatasaray? The thing that I do know is that Roy Hodgson seems to continue to get the best out of this team, and they do have some other attacking options as long as they can hold on to them before the end of the transfer window, that they don't get sold. I do think Crystal Palace will do decently well. This may be an ambitious spot to put them in, but with all the other teams below them having, either questions or concerns about missing players, it was hard for me to then put any of them above Crystal Palace at this point. So I see Crystal Palace sitting in 10th position. Now in 9th position, I put Brighton. And the one thing that I want to state first off is that I think now, in 9th position moving up, we have a different caliber of team that we're looking at now. I think a lot of the teams from number 10 and below, they're going to be fighting themselves. And I think the teams coming up, starting with Brighton at number 9, are going to really be able to push on and kind of separate themselves from the rest of the Premier League. The first one being Brighton. Brighton has always made good business and always has done well despite the number of players that have been pulled from there. And I think we now have a situation where Brighton can start holding on to some of those players because they've generated enough funds. I do hope they can hold on to Caicedo. They've been asking $100 million for him. I do hope that they can hold on to him, but even if they don't, I know that they can invest well. De Zerbi has done a great job. I think they'll drop down to 9th compared to last year because it will be a new balance trying to figure out where do they fit in the European setting, as they're going to have to play in the Europa League this year. So this year they're going to drop down a little bit, but still be pretty solid team sitting in 9th. And number 8, I have Tottenham. Now, Tottenham, again, they've got a good squad. They've brought in good players. But I have a couple questions, right? The first one is, at the time of this recording, Harry Kane, there's been an agreement between clubs for Harry Kane to go to Bayern Munich. Now, Harry Kane still has to agree to that transfer. So we don't know if he's going to be playing for Tottenham at this point in time. And that would be a huge miss for this team. The other thing that I don't know is how Postecoglou, their manager, is going to work in the Premier League. I know he's had success at Celtic, but really that's kind of his biggest success thus far. And as we've seen in the last few years of managers coming from the Scottish Premier League to manage in the Premier League, they haven't necessarily had the same success. So I do have questions about Postecoglou, and if Harry Kane goes, it's going to be very new and different of how this team is going to work. I think they still have a lot of good quality, but I don't really see them pushing on beyond this point. Now, I could be totally wrong, especially because they don't have any European action, so they're going to have a much lighter schedule than some of the other people above them in these predictions. But I think in this case, if there's the uncertainty of the manager and Harry Kane's position in this team, I think I have to put them at 8th position. Number 7, Aston Villa. I think Aston Villa has done an excellent job with Unai Emery bringing in quality players and playing quality football. They got 7th last year, and they're going to be playing in the Europa Conference League. And I think they're going to do pretty well in that competition, just like West Ham did. They may not go and win it, but I think they're going to do pretty well. And on top of that, I do think that Aston Villa has enough pieces in there that they're going to continue to push, and they're going to be able to stay in this area and, again, earn European football by being in that seventh position. So I think they're continuing to build on what they have. Unai Emery has shown that he can manage at this level, and I see Aston Villa sitting in seventh. Number 6, I have Newcastle. Newcastle had an excellent year last year, pushing their way all the way into the fourth spot, the Champions League positions, and that was an excellent season for Newcastle. I do see a little bit of a regression from that to sit in sixth. They still have a quality club with quality players, and Eddie Howe has been a great coach for them, or manager at this point. I just see that potentially the Champions League schedule might be a little bit too much for them. And what I mean by too much is they may not have the same depth as other teams have. They're only a couple seasons away from fighting off relegation, and even though they've had new owners, they've been slowly spending, but I think in a smart way, which I think is a good way of doing it. But it just means for Newcastle, they're not going to be able to stay up where they were, and they're going to drop down to sixth position this year. Number 5, I have Chelsea, and I was really contemplating between this one and the next team you'll see in the table. Chelsea, I think, is certainly going to be turning it around compared to last year. They had an abysmal year last year, finishing 12th, and I do think Chelsea is going to then push their way into this conversation. Now, what might be to their benefit is being in 5th position is still most likely going to reward them with a Champions League position. That is still yet to be determined, but that is a very likely scenario. So even if Chelsea finishes in 5th, that would then end up being good for them, as they would then get back into the Champions League. I do see Pochettino doing well with this team. My concern is that they've got a number of players that I don't know how they're going to gel together. They've got certainly talent there, but it needs to be seen as a product together. And that's what I'm waiting on for Chelsea. That I think they did very well to get rid of a lot of their talent, as I feel like they just collected a bunch of talent and then we're not sure who was going to be at what role and how much playing time. So I think Chelsea has narrowed that down nicely to a point where they're going to have success, but I do see them sitting into that 5th position this year. And in 4th position, I have Liverpool. The question that I have around Liverpool is their midfield. Now, they've kind of got a fully new midfield at this point, and I'm curious to see kind of how does that work, right? They're going to have McAllister and Szoboszlai, and we'll see what the third player is going to be in there. But it's difficult for me to see, okay, how are they going to be able to jump into and be automatically back and successful again? When we see, I think they missed Sadio Mane last year being a second attack up there to balance out Mo Salah. So I do think I am curious of can Jota or Darwin Nunez or Luis Diaz be that person? I'm kind of waiting to see if that's going to be the case. And so with some of those questions, I do have to sit Liverpool in 4th position this year. In 3rd, I went with Manchester United. I think Erik ten Hag coming in has done wonders for this club. He had to fight Cristiano Ronaldo and make sure that he got out of the club and change the culture of this club to then try to be in a winning position. My concern might be, do they have quality at every position to be able to push on from this point? We're not sure about how Højlund, their new striker, is going to look, especially he's starting off injured, but we'll see how he can get on with things and how is Mason Mount going to bed into the team as well. That's where then I can't really push them any further than this. However, I do see that Ten Hag is going to get the best out of the players that he has, which tells me that they're not going to drop much from last year, or not at all, I should say, and they're going to be sitting in 3rd position again this year. In second position, I have Manchester City. Now, I know that this is bold. This is really against the grain to go with Manchester City not winning the league, right? There's all the questions of, well, they have won it 3 years in a row. They won the treble last year. They are a great team. My only question is, where is their motivation to push onward? They're also going to have more congested fixtures moving forward because they're going to have to play the Club World Cup, things like that. Now, they have the depth and quality to do that. My concern is, where do they push from there? They've strengthened in defense, but they're also missing Gundogan and they're missing Mahrez. They could be factors in how their success goes. I don't think Kovacic is the same player that Gundogan is, so I don't think that's a like-for-like replacement. And so when I look at Manchester City, I do think there'll be, not intentionally, but there's going to be a little bit of a let-off that you've been pushing and pushing for a Champions League, and at this point, okay, what is that next motivation? I understand some people look at it and say, well, maybe that motivation is to win the league 4 years in a row, which has also never been done, and that could be the motivation that pushes them forward. I am then going ahead and trying to be bold and saying that Manchester City is going to sit second. And in first place, I have Arsenal. I think Arsenal did very well last year to then push themselves to be in a title contention. I don't think that was the goal moving into the beginning of the last season. I think most people saw them pushing just to get in that Champions League spot. But they proved that they have a squad that can challenge for the title. And with the additions of Declan Rice and Timber in defense, I think those really solidify some of the question areas that we had on this team. And in this case, I do see Arsenal being able to push forward from here. The question that you might have is, well, they are taking on Champions League football, which they didn't have last year, which could mean that they're going to get pulled in regards to the depth that they have in their squad. But I do see that they have the ability to then push further into the league and be able to secure that first position and be champions of England. So here's a look at the table once again, where we have Wolves, Sheffield United, and Luton being relegated. We have Arsenal as champions with Man City, Man United, and Liverpool being in Champions League positions. Chelsea may be in a Champions League position, but right now in fifth would sit as a Europa League squad with Newcastle and Aston Villa getting the last Europe spot. If you want to put in your predictions, you can put them down in the comments below. I'm excited for the Premier League coming up. I hope to do more Premier League, European football content in the future. So please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thank you.